Hi everyone, my name is Stavros and welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to look at and talk about my top 10 standalone books of all time. Now actually picking the top 10 wasn't too difficult, but actually ranking them into which position they would be, that was actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So I'm excited to talk about it a little bit. I'm also, to be honest, a little bit worried that I'm forgetting some book that I read a long time ago that would probably make it up to here. But if I'm forgetting it, then maybe that means it just wasn't part of the top 10 anyways, right? If I'm forgetting it. But I'm really excited to talk about these, so we're going to jump into it, starting with number 10, all the way to my favorite book, I guess, favorite standalone book of all time. So, number 10 is Capo. I've talked about this book on the channel before, but Capo is basically a mafia book. You follow this character named Silvio, who starts off in Italy and ends up coming to the United States, to New Orleans. And it's basically a book about kind of how the mafia starts in America. It's actually based on some actual historical data, fictionalized of course, but this was one of the books that got me into reading when I was in like grade 7, grade 8, and so it holds a really special place in my heart. I recognize that it's not maybe the best written book of all time, but it has a lot of nostalgia for me. I really like mafia stories as well, and like I said, it was one of the books that got me into reading, so I'm putting this at number 10, my 10th standalone book of all time. Number 9 is The Man from St. Petersburg. This book is a really good book. Ken Follett is a really good author. You'll see him come up again a little bit later down on the list, but I really like Ken Follett as an author. This story is about, you're kind of following this aristocratic woman in St. Petersburg, as well as this man that's kind of wandering around. I don't really know how to describe the book too much. It's not a super long book, but I really enjoyed reading this story. It was really good. I felt like it was like a really big page turner. I wanted to know what was happening so much as I was reading it, and I really enjoyed reading this story. So number 9 is The Man from St. Petersburg. Number 8 is Daisy Jones and the Six. Again, Taylor Jenkins Reid, I really like her as an author. You'll see her come up again a little bit later on the list. But this book, it was a really great story. Again, it flowed really well, and it was a really interesting, the way that it was written was really interesting. It's written entirely effectively in dialogue, as if you're reading a transcript of an interview or something like that. And I really thought that was a really cool concept. And because of that, I think it made reading this book super easy. And I know there's an audiobook of this, and I feel like the audiobook would be really good. I don't know if they have different actors and actresses playing the different characters and voicing them, but if they do, then that'd be a really good opportunity to listen to that. So, and I know there's a TV show about this, so I'm excited to listen and watch that at some point. But Daisy Jones and the Six, basically, again, this fictionalized America in like the 1960s, where you're kind of watching this band, up-and-coming band, a couple different bands kind of come up, and how they got as big as they were, and then what happened to them. It's a really nice story, really good, and like I said, it's a really interesting, the way that they portray the story is really interesting, so highly recommend. This is number 8, Daisy Jones and the Six. Now number 7, I don't actually own physically, I listen to it as an audiobook, and number 7 is Piranesi. Piranesi, I put up a review of this book earlier on my channel a couple weeks ago, and this book was an incredible book. Super short, you know, the audiobook was about 8 hours long, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit confusing at the start, but as soon as you get into it and the story starts to reveal itself, it is just like an insane story. So I really liked Piranesi. I feel like there's not much I can say about it that won't spoil it, but Piranesi's for a lot of people, Piranesi is on their top books of all time. And at first I was like, really? This is on the top books of all time? But as I progressed through it, I was like, yeah, I can understand why this is there. And as I was making my list, I was like, Piranesi has to be on this part of the list because it's so good. So Piranesi is my number 7. Number 6 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Again, another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. This was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book. And this book was so much fun. Again, I listened to this one as an audiobook, and they did have different actresses playing different characters, and which just makes me think that's why Daisy Jones and the Six, I feel like that one also probably does. But this was a really great book. It's almost like a bit of a mystery of what's going to happen and what's going on. You're going back and forth between Evelyn Hugo in present day, who is old, maybe in her 80s or something like that, who's decided to give an interview, and she never gives interviews. She's a very famous actress from the 70s and 80s, and she's never given an interview before, but she's decided to give an interview only to one specific person. You don't know why. And so she's giving that interview, and so you're looking at her in the present day, talking about her life, and you're then jumping back to, you know, the 1960s, 1970s as she's living these different events, and as she gets married to her 7 various husbands. And she's recounting this story, so you're hearing it back and forth from the present day and the past, and you're jumping back and forth, and there's little nuggets that are getting dropped in about what the mystery is going to be and what kind of you're waiting for. But it's just a really heartwarming story, and I don't know, you really just start to fall in love with the characters, and it's a really, really well done story. I really love this one. Number 6 is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So now we're jumping into the top 5. So my top 5 standalone books of all time, which is kind of crazy to say as I was ranking it. But number 5 is Monday's Not Coming. This book is an incredible book. It is also just a heartbreaking book. It's basically about these 2 black girls who live, I think it's in like Baltimore or something like that, somewhere in the States. And Monday is the name of one of the girls, and her best friend, I'm forgetting the name of the friend at the moment, but Monday goes missing. And no one's believing her best friend when she's telling people she's not here, she should be here, she should be here. And it's basically just an unraveling of what happened to Monday and how her best friend is coping with it. And it's a really devastating book. It really kind of shines a light on how, for a lot of black youth and black people, matters are kind of just tossed aside and not taken as seriously as if this was a white person or a young white girl that had gone missing. And yeah, it was an incredible book, but it's really, really, it's a tough read. It really forces you to think about things, and it's emotional. Like, I cried multiple times while reading this book. But it is an incredible story. I really recommend Monday's Not Coming. My number 5 standalone book of all time. Number 4 is The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto. This was my top book of 2025, and I really, really loved this book. It's funny that both this book and Daisy Jones and the Six made it into the top 10 because they have very similar kind of styles of story, in the sense that this also follows a fictionalized musician in the 1950s, 1960s, who is kind of coming up, and you're following his story. You're following Frankie Presto's story. And I mean, yeah, it is just an incredible, incredible story. Really beautiful, like the music, and it just really makes you feel. I'm not a musician, but reading this book made me feel like I maybe understand what it feels like to be a musician and to be able to play such beautiful music. And yeah, just a really, really awesome book. Number 4, The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto. Top 3. We're getting the top 3 of my solo books of all time. And number 3 is a massive book, The Count of Monte Cristo. This book, I read it a few years ago now, and it is just like one of the longest books I've ever read. And one of the first classics that I kind of dived into, and I wanted to start reading classics. And it did not disappoint. It is a long book, but I mean, it took me a long time to read it, I remember, but I don't remember there being a lot of times where I was dreading reading it. I really enjoyed reading this book, like the vast majority of the time. It's about this man in France who basically gets backstabbed by a couple different people and ultimately gets thrown into prison, and is in prison for like 15, 16 years kind of thing, a long time. And while he's in prison, he devises this plan to enact his revenge. And so the first part of the story, you're in a kind of situation where you know a bit more than him. You know more than Edmond Dantes. In the second half of the story, after he escapes from prison and he kind of makes his way back to France and he starts to enact his revenge, he knows more than you, and you're trying to figure out, what is he doing? What is he doing? And it's just, it is such a good story. I can't recommend it high enough. The Count of Monte Cristo. Amazing, amazing book. My number 3 in terms of standalone books of all time. Number 2 is the second Ken Follett on the list. This one, you could argue, I guess, is part of a series, but I kind of consider it a standalone. I've not read the rest of the books, but I know that not the characters don't come back. It's kind of just like in the same world as far as I'm concerned. Number 2 is The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This book, again, is another massive chonker of a book, but it is just so invigorating and so beautiful. It's a historical fiction, I guess, set in England, and you're kind of following the building of a cathedral over a number of years. And just so much happens. You really just fall so deeply in love with the characters in this story, and you want to know what's going to happen to them. And yeah, there's just some like horrible things that happen. There are some really beautiful and heartwarming things that happen, and it just a really overall fantastic story. It's a really long story, but well worth it. I've read this book 4 or 5 times, even though it's this long, and it's such a good story. Really love it. The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And now my number 1 book of all time. My number 1 book of all time is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I really hummed and hawed about what would be the number 1 book of all time. Where would it be? Where would it go? And as I was kind of looking at these 10, and I thought, okay, these 10 are for sure going to be books that are important to me and that are going to make it into the top 10. And when I hummed and hawed about which would be actually number 1, honestly, number 1 was hardly a decision. A Man Called Ove is such a beautiful book. It's not a crazy long book, but it packs a heck of a punch in a short period of time. A Man Called Ove is a story about Ove, who has recently lost his wife, and he's an old man, and he doesn't know what to do without her. And it's a story about found family, and it is just absolutely heart-wrenching. This story, it tore my heart. I remember when I finished reading A Man Called Ove, I was lying in bed and my wife was asleep beside me, and I woke her up because I was just like manically sobbing in the bed, trying to be quiet to not wake her up, but I was shaking the bed. I was crying so much. It was so beautiful, and yeah, I can't sing the praises of A Man Called Ove highly enough. It's a short read. Highly recommend it. My number 1 standalone book of all time, A Man Called Ove. And there you have it. My top 10 standalone books of all time. This was a really fun exercise to actually go through, see the books that I've read, and try and rank them and see kind of where they would place. It was a lot of fun, and I would love to hear what your guys' top 10s are. Let me know what your top 10 is. Let me know what you think of my top 10. Are there books that you think really great, not as good? I really like to chat about it. But ultimately what I want to know is, what are some of your top standalone books of all time? I'd love to hear what yours are so I can add them to my TBR and eventually probably get to them at some point. So let me know what your top 10s are and your top books are in the comments down below. And until next time.